There we go. There we go. All right, good morning and welcome to our Bible class. And this will tentatively be the final Bible class on Hebrews. So we'll see if we get through how much we get through today, because we have 2 chapters to do that. All right, again, review. We finished last week. We went through Hebrews 11, which is, of course, the great heroes of the faith chapter, the Hall of Faith, and so talk about all these people and what they did and what they endured and how God was faithful to them. And so then we get to Hebrews 12, where Jesus is described as the founder and perfecter of our faith. And could someone read these first couple verses for us?
Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured from sinners such hostility against himself, so that you may not grow weary or faint-hearted.
All right. So again, so all those people mentioned in Hebrews 11, including all the unnamed ones. So surrounded by such great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight that hinders and instead run with endurance the race set before us. All right. And it begins with therefore. And so what's the therefore? Why do we begin with therefore?
Conclusion.
Conclusion. Okay, so again, the connection with everything that's come before. That all these people, Abraham, Moses, Abel, Enoch, David, Rahab, all those people, because of what they did, how they endured, how they remained faithful, and God was faithful to them. Because we have their example, therefore we, you people Hebrews is written to, and you, those of us reading it today, have this example and know that we can endure too. All right? And again, we keep it's not that we're looking at, but we look at these examples, these people, heroes of the faith, but we not only look at them, we look at who they're pointing to, which they were all looking ahead to and pointing to Jesus as the founder or author, perfecter, pioneer, forerunner of our faith. All right, so what do these first 3 verses show us about Jesus, who he is, what he's done?
Well, I think about the word joy.
Yes.
With joy set before him, not just amazes me that.
Yeah, right. Well, the why Jesus is doing this, and that was a big part of Pastor Mark's sermon last week. For joy, this isn't just out of begrudgingly doing this. This is for the joy set before him, because he knew what he was doing for us and who he was doing it for. Good. Anything else? All right, 2 other things that came to mind as we were looking here. First off, so Jesus is the founder, pioneer, perfecter, kind of the head runner. One of my seminary professors was a cyclist, and would talk about the person at the head of the peloton, at the head of the group, or kind of like the goose at the head of the V. That it's easier for everyone to follow because of what they're doing in terms of creating air resistance and things. Or I remember when spring break service trip coming back through Iowa, we, inevitably as soon as we got back to Iowa on these spring break service trips, we'd hit a snowstorm. And, and start having to follow a snowplow from Fairfield on or something to be able to get back to Ames. But we could follow the snowplow because it was clearing a path for us. It was the forerunner, and that's what Jesus is doing, kind of clearing the path for us. And then the other thing is that when you're trying to do something, you have to keep something in the distance. I hear from farmers running combines. I mean, everything's GPS now, so it's not quite that way. But you picked a point in the distance so you could aim for that and stay straight as you were going through. Or there's a couple spots I do when I'm mowing my lawn. Much less intensive, but there's a point so I know where the yard boundaries are, and I can try and go straight. So having that point, and that's what Jesus is for us too, that we look ahead to that. All right. Good. Any other thoughts on verses 1 through 3? All right. Again, we kind of touched on this earlier. Again, the author of Hebrews speaks of a joy that sustained Jesus through his time of intense suffering on the cross. What was the joy that he held on to?
He was fulfilling his mission.
Fulfilling his mission, yep.
And even though he said, my God, why have thou forsaken me? It was almost like that was part of the plan. But that was his humanity.
Right.
That was crying out then.
The joy of knowing what his purpose, what his mission was, that he was going to do it, that all the chances he'd had to not, to veer off and not follow through, he kept focused on that mission, and now it was, to the point where it was mission accomplished.
God was merciful to him in that he died relatively soon. It wasn't like he had to endure like the other.
Right. I mean, crucifixion was a horrible thing, and the fact that he had all the sin of the world on him as he's doing that would have been horrific. But we know from other stories of crucifixion that the fact that he's on the cross for 3 hours is really short. But most of the time especially after Rome put down like Spartacus's slave rebellion and things, they just line the highways with crosses, put a bunch of people on there, and just let them linger for days as a sign of this is what happens to you when you mess with Rome, kind of thing. And so the fact that Jesus is only on the cross for those 3 hours, and then the two terrorists with him get their legs broken, so they die quicker too. It definitely could have been worse, but it was definitely bad. But again, Jesus also knew that his mission was accomplished. I mean, that's what it is finished means. That's it is accomplished. That kind of thing. So, all right. There we go. All right. Continuing on here in chapter 12, can someone read a few verses for us?
Do not grow weary. In your struggle against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood. And have you forgotten the exhortation that addresses you as sons? My son, do not regard lightly the discipline of the Lord, nor be weary when reproved by him. For the Lord disciplines the one he loves, and chastises every son whom he receives. It is for discipline that you have to endure. God is treating you as sons, for what son is there whom his father does not discipline? If you are left without discipline, in which all have participated, then you are illegitimate children and not sons. Besides this, we have had earthly fathers who disciplined us, and we respected them. Shall we not much more be subject to the Father of spirits and live? For they disciplined us for a short time, as it seemed best for them, but he disciplines us for our good, that we may share his holiness. For the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it.
All right. So any thoughts, reactions, questions, comments to that section? Is being reminded that they're disciplined in it, but if they're being disciplined, that's proof that God loves them.
So we should almost expect to be.
Right, yes, oh, yeah, yeah, so we should expect
They're not
suffering.
always going to go.
Right, yeah, we should expect suffering and persecution because A, sin's in the world, and B, that sometimes God can use that suffering to refine us, discipline us, focus us in more on it.
And when you think about how parents discipline their children in the hopes that that helps, not harms.
Right, yeah. Yeah, does that kind of resonate with those of you who've been parents or our parents? Yeah.
But we often don't see it as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's one of those things that, yeah, you appreciate more when you're older. That, oh, wait a minute, my parents were right for telling me not to have done X, Y, and Z, or for me getting in trouble for that. Yeah.
You used to get in trouble?
Not Gary.
All right. So again, kind of touch similar idea here. So how does the no pain, no gain philosophy show up here? There's one way to understand this.
That is the way it sounds.
Yeah. Yep. No pain, no gain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it keeps you focused on
Yeah.
where your focus should remain rather than let you get distracted
Yep.
off track.
Had a basketball coach one time that it was a particular, I think it was over Christmas, and we were probably not tuned in. And pretty soon he's kind of yelling about this and he's yelling about that. And finally he blows the whistle and he says, look, the minute I quit yelling at you guys, you'll know I don't care about you anymore. I'm yelling because, and he's trying to explain this, you gotta work on this. And I care about you, that's why I'm trying to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Years ago, we had foster teenagers. And when they would go somewhere, we would say, where are you going? Who will you be with? Oh, and what are their last names?
Right.
And you have a curfew, you need to be home at 12 o'clock. And they couldn't understand any of that because they didn't have any boundaries.
Right.
But the thing is, they abided by it. They always were home when there was a curfew. So that just reminded me of, yeah, of this.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's part of the challenge people have, and especially if they're in the foster system, and because they often haven't had that kind of parental authority or boundaries set up, and so sometimes it's an adjustment, to get to that at that point.
It's changed our philosophy on discipline for our 4 children too.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yes. All right. So no pain, no gain. But now we get back to the a little encouragement. Here, could someone read these next few verses for us?
Therefore lift your drooping hands and strengthen your weak knees and make straight paths for your feet, so that what is lame may not be put out of joint, but rather be healed. Strive for peace with everyone, and for the holiness without which no one will see the Lord. See to it that no one fails to obtain the grace of God, that no root of bitterness springs up and causes trouble, and by it many become defiled. so that no one is sexually immoral or unholy like Esau, who sold his birthright for a single meal. For you know that afterward, when he desired to inherit the blessing, he was rejected, for he found no chance to repent, though he sought it with tears.
All right. So again, like the author of Hebrews does, keeps referring back to these stories in the Old Testament. And so Jacob and Esau, remember what happened with Esau's the oldest son, Jacob's the younger one, but Esau loses his birthright twice. And so do you remember what happens with the soup incident here?
Didn't Jacob make the soup?
Yeah, so Esau comes back from a day of hunting. So Esau's the manly, hairy man who goes off and hunts and does all that stuff, and Jacob's with the women in the kitchen and that kind of stuff, and likes to stay in the tents. And so Esau comes back from a day of hunting and wants a bowl of soup, and Jacob tricks him to say, okay, I'll give you the bowl of soup if you give me your birthright. And Jacob's so famished, he said, fine, whatever, just give me the bowl of soup. And loses birthright there. And then same way, then later on, when Isaac's going to bless Esau, Esau's off hunting to go get the good food to be able to make the special meal. Jacob instead, with Rebekah's help, makes the meal, goes in wearing a fur coat and smells, wears some of Esau's clothes, so he smells like Esau and things, because Isaac's kind of blind at this point. And Isaac blesses Jacob, and then Esau comes back, and it's like, what do you mean you gave the blessing to Jacob? Give me the blessing instead. And Isaac, I gave him the blessing. I can't take it back. And so Esau, even at this point then, because he's lost the birthright, he's lost the blessing, and can't get it back. So at least what part of what we're getting at is there's a point where there's a decision to be made, and there's not any turning back from that. So is this then referring to Esau's eternal destination, or is this just referring to kind of his blessing and relationship with his father and his brother? Yeah, Connie.
But Rebecca was the one that gave Jacob the idea.
Oh yeah. Rebecca's definitely in on this, right?
It was a
Yeah.
little more complicated.
A little more complicated. Well, and I mean Jacob, I think it was listening to the Lutheran Hour on my way here a couple weeks ago, talked about Jacob, and that Jacob, the name Jacob is heel grabber and almost trickster, and then after he wrestles with God, he's renamed Israel, being one struggle with God, so he's no longer the trickster. And so I mean we find Jacob kind of doing those kind of trickster things throughout his time. What was it? One of the grad students was describing her working on her PhD, and she described it as she worked on it as long as Jacob had to work for Rachel. But then, of course, Laban, the father, tricks Jacob, and so Jacob tricks him back, and because he has to work another 7 years to get Leah, and I mean, it's just a whole mess. But yeah,
Twins, too,
yeah,
so it's
yeah, they're twins, and so
both firstborn,
right, yeah.
but Esau was
Yeah.
actually first.
So, yeah. But then that's again part of why Jacob both sees the ladder of what the angels ascending and descending, and then wrestles with God, is because he's on the run from Esau. Sees the ladder when he's on the run from Esau the first time, and he wrestles with God because Esau wants to see him again, and Jacob's like, okay, fine, rest of my family, you go on the other side of the river. I'm going to stay here and meet Esau in case it doesn't go well. And then, so it seems like Esau repents and is reconciled both to Jacob and to God later on in his life. So it's not talking about the blessing he can't get back is not his eternal blessing. It's the blessing to be from his father as the firstborn. All right, so how do we reach, again, this begins the holiness before all people. How do we reach that goal? Holiness and peace before all people. You know, real easy for us to do now, right?
Assembling together, trying to have the word speak to us.
Okay, so we're coming together and the word spoken to us. Okay, anything else? So,
Prayer.
praying, yeah. So, yeah, again, we'll get through some of this as we keep going through now and get into 13 and the practices mentioned there, that final list of exhortations of things to do and not do. All right, and now we continue on, and now we get this author jumps back to, again, Moses and Mount Sinai and what happens there, and reminder of what they have is greater than what that was. So could someone read this for us?
A kingdom that cannot be shaken. For you have not come to what may be touched, a blazing fire and darkness and gloom and a tempest, and the sound of a trumpet, and a voice whose words made the hearers beg that no further messages be spoken to them. For they could not endure the order that was given. If even a beast touches the mountain, it shall be stoned. Indeed, so terrifying was the sight that Moses said, I tremble with fear. But you have come to Mount Zion, and to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to innumerable angels in festal gathering, and to the assembly of the firstborn who are enrolled in heaven, and to God, the judge of all, and to the spirits of the righteous made perfect, and to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and to the sprinkled blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel. See that you do not refuse him who is speaking, for if they did not escape when they refused him who warned them on earth, much less will we escape if we reject him who warns from heaven. At that time his voice shook the earth, but now he has promised, yet once more I will shake not only the earth, but also the heavens. This phrase, yet once more, indicates the removal of things that are shaken, that is, things that have been made, in order that the things that cannot be shaken may remain. Therefore, let us be grateful for receiving the kingdom that cannot be shaken, and thus let us offer to God acceptable worship with reverence and awe, for our God is a consuming fire.
All righty. So what's going on here? What's the author of Hebrews referencing with this mountain and fire and not wanting to approach it?
Well, when they're touring,
What?
when they're touring, when they've escaped Egypt.
Yeah, when they've escaped Egypt and they come to Mount Sinai, there's earthquakes and fire and clouds and things. And you know it's bad when even Moses goes, I tremble with fear. And so what happens is the people, God says, I'm your God, you're going to be my people. And the people go, we want nothing to do with this fire and earthquake and thunder and stuff. So, okay, Moses, you go up there. You've talked to God before. We'll stay down here. And then Moses is even trembling with fear, but then he goes and talks with God. They make the covenant. They receive the 10 commandments and things. And well, then the people get tired of waiting and decide to make a golden calf. And things go badly from there. So instead of the old site of the old covenant that was made, now they're in the site of the new covenant. Not only Mount Zion, but this isn't just the earthly Mount Zion, but they're looking to the heavenly Mount Zion, heavenly Jerusalem. And again, Jesus, mediator of the new covenant, and whose sprinkled blood says more than Abel's, because again, Abel's blood just cries for vengeance after Cain killed him. But Jesus' blood doesn't scream for vengeance; it screams, it shouts, forgiveness. So, all right. Again, we need encouragement from each other. This is, I used that that was from part of my sermon. All right. And then why is it important that we have something that isn't the kingdom that can't be shaken? We know that it's forever, right? Despite all the chaos, anything else happening in the world, that the kingdom ours remaineth. I mean, like when we sang "A Mighty Fortress" a few weeks ago. And all the, despite all the chaos, all the challenges in the world, we know that everything else in the world can be shaken, but God can't be shaken. God's kingdom can't be shaken. God's love for us can't be shaken, and so we always can trust in that. All right. Any other questions, comments, thoughts on chapter 12?
I think when it also talks about with reverence and awe, I think the recognition that we're not in control, we have to put our faith in God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of those challenges that we deal with as Christians, and in some ways, especially as American Christians, is that there's a balance between the fancy theological words are immanence and transcendence. And I might have mentioned this before, but so immanence is how close God is that God's close to us, and transcendence is how, transcendent, how far away God is. And of course we have a God that balances both of those things, and we kind of emphasize different sides based on different things. God's immanence is found in Jesus especially, and God's transcendence is found in, we talk about God in heaven's light years away, just watching over things, how different, that God's ways are higher than our ways, higher than our thoughts, that kind of thing. And we tend to focus in on God's immanence, that God is relational, God is with us and easy to get a hold of, but at the same time, then we've sometimes lost some of that fear and awe and reverence that gets mentioned here. I think it's Anne Lamott. I've used it in sermons before too, a writer who talks about how really if we're wanting to be in the presence of God when we come to worship, we shouldn't just be blandly sitting in pews. The ushers should be passing out life preservers and hard hats and things. That to call upon God is really something that is big and powerful and mighty, and we're dealing with a God bigger than we are and more powerful than we are, and we don't always use the reverence. I mean, we have access to God through Jesus, and we emphasize that, but again, sometimes almost too much. Yeah, Connie.
That phrase was in the anthem this morning.
Oh yeah.
That cannot be shaken.
Cannot be shaken, right? And what the choir sang. Yeah, so good reminder.
It's very appropriate.
Yes, definitely. All right. Any other thoughts? All right. Well, let's see if we can get through 13 too, as long as we've got time to maybe try. All right. Could someone read this for us? Yeah. Thank you.
Let brotherly love continue. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares. Remember those who are in prison as though in prison with them, and those who are mistreated, since you also are in the body. All
right. Again, I mentioned this in my sermon. Some of you may have realized this, some of them didn't, but those 8 small triangles in the stained glass window are kind of the 8 acts of Christian virtue that get mentioned in the parable of sheep and goats and other things. Sheep, when did we do these things for you? And when didn't we do these things to you? And that's most of what these are. So bury the dead, visit those in prison, visit those who are sick. Well, that's bury the dead, clothe the naked, feed the hungry, give water to the thirsty. This is the one that isn't in there, but it made it around number 8 instead of 7 is the instruct those who need instruction. But yeah, so that can be a reminder too of that. What we're doing there. All right. Had anyone noticed that before, or anyone known that before? No. Okay. We need to get more of the cheat sheets out in the back in the narthex. But we have a trifold booklet that explains what the parables are and what the different things mean in the stained glass window, which is helpful. I saw pastor friend on Facebook his church is celebrating 100th anniversary, and there's 4 figures on their altar, but they have nowhere listed who they are. And so they're trying to, and they can figure out most of them, but there's one they're kind of confused on. Who? And so as we posted the picture and said, who do we think these? And there are lots of suggestions. And,
Those are the words of Jesus, when
Yeah.
he talks about what you have done or
Right,
what
exactly,
you'd like
right.
to do.
Yeah.
Give dress to those people who
Yep.
need it, and fruit and flowers you
Right.
bring to people who need them,
Yeah.
visit the prison, and
Yep.
harbor the people, and of course teach the word.
Yeah.
But those are, that was one of the reasons.
Yeah, again, if you're what do Christians do? Yeah, I mean, there's some things Christians do. Good. All right, let's keep going. Yeah. Someone read this.
Let marriage be held in honor among all, and let the marriage bed be undefiled, for God will judge the sexually immoral and adulterous. Keep your life free from love of money and be content with what you have. For he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. So we can confidently say, the Lord is my helper, I will not fear. What can man do to me?
All right. So, live sexually pure lives and keep free of love of money. Both easy to do for us, right? No, not so much. Definitely. Again, challenges in the culture. They were dealing with challenges in our culture, definitely as well. Especially a consumer mentality of, just being content with what you have. That's going to be really hard to do. All right, yeah. So what are some of the ways people seek contentment for material things, and how is this like the temptations the Hebrew Christians had to go back to the Old Covenant?
It's easy to be content with if things are all good for you.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes it's easier to be content when things are good. Sometimes, though, then we still get, instead we're not content even if things are going well. They could be going better. One of those where comparison is the danger spot. Yeah, you had something too?
People try to seek contentment by just trying to store up more and more.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'll be content when I have, enough in my 401k to retire comfortably, or enough stuff in my garage to make sure I'm not going to worry about however it is. Yeah, we think we'll be content if we get enough, but then once we get that, then need more. When is enough enough? Exactly.
On the internet, it showed a picture of an addict, and it said, subtitles said, just wait till all of them start passing away.
Oh, yeah. All right, and again, that temptation, the Hebrew Christians, Hebrews seems to be written to, were Jewish Christians who'd want to go back, tempted to go back to the Old Covenant things. So things were so much better in the old ways instead of this new way. And of course we deal with a bit of nostalgia here in our country and culture too. Things were better in the old days for a variety of things.
They even thought it was better in Egypt.
Right, yeah, they thought it was better in Egypt. Who was it? Someone was talking about how they always remembered that part because it was like one of the few times cucumbers is mentioned in the Bible. When they talk about all that, we have manna and quail to eat, but we had garlic and cucumbers and onions and leeks and things, and back in Egypt. Sure, you were making bricks without straw, but you had cucumbers, so probably not a good trade-off. But as you're wandering through the wilderness for 40 years, you might get fooled to think that way. All right, let's keep going.
Remember your leaders, those who spoke to you the word of God, and consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith.
All right, so how have church leaders inspired you? Because this is specifically both this, here in chapter 13, we're specifically talking about church leaders, not political leaders or those in authority. But how have any church leaders inspired you? Or, those who taught you the word, taught you, were good examples for you to imitate? Yeah, Jeanette?
For me, it was my pastor for confirmation. But many other Christians have
Yeah.
been influential, and he's long gone.
Yeah, no, it's been a few years, but I think there was a pastor's conference on confirmation, and I think the guy from CPH said, if nothing else, really the biggest benefit for confirmation is that the kids get to know their pastor, and the pastor gets to know the kids. But
I like that.
yeah.
My godmother, she was really always in the Word, and she also taught Sunday school when I was about sixth grade, and she would just, keep so many notes, and I think up until that point I thought my Bible was supposed to be kind of pristine. I didn't want to write in it because I thought maybe I would, mess it up, or that would be, kind of was taught more of like your books, you should not, write in the margins and things like this. And then I learned from her, like, oh yes, you should write things down and highlight it, and she had an old typewriter, she'd type up notes and she'd put it in, and so just someone that was so actively engaged in the Word and tried to understand the meaning, even when she was well into her 80s, so it was always was a great leader as far as someone that really, when it says to talk the Word.
Yeah. All right. Then again, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever, which is a good reminder to us again. The world's changing, wants to shake everything else, then Jesus Christ is the same. All right, let's keep going. Could someone read this for us?
Do not be led away by diverse and strange teachings, for it is good for the heart to be strengthened by grace, not by foods, which have not benefited those devoted to them.
All right, so what strange teachings do we need to avoid today, and how do we know if a teaching's true or not? Yeah, Connie?
Well, I think one of the strange teachings is the prosperity gospel.
Oh, yep.
This idea that God blesses you according to your worth or what you've done for Him, or it's kind of like a deal.
Oh, yeah.
And, if you're not blessed and you're not living on the north side of Ames in a huge house, then what does that say about your faith? Is it weak?
Exactly.
That is always bothering me.
Yeah, no, there's great temptation to
And I think
give
another
and do
one
that.
too is this sense of you kind of save yourself by, giving your life to the Lord.
Yep.
And that personal testimony. And if you've never done that, then maybe you aren't really a Christian, or your Christianity is not as serious.
Yeah. Yeah, one of my best friends from seminary was raised, or partially in a Pentecostal church, and the fact that he never spoke in tongues was a huge thing and a huge moment of guilt for him. But then he ended up getting connected to a Lutheran church in high school and then college and seminary, and where the whole being saved by grace and not by what I do was a huge, blessing, huge burden lifted off from him. So, all right, yeah.
I had a colleague once who was Catholic or raised Catholic, told me that Lutherans were Bud Light compared to Catholics.
Right.
It's sort of like Catholicism, but it's lighter.
Right. I think it was it Robin Williams who said Episcopalians were like Catholics, but what all the liturgy, half the guilt, or something like that. Yeah.
Requirements.
Yeah, something like that.
Days
Yeah.
that you have to be in
Yeah.
church and that sort of thing.
Yeah. All right. So we have an altar from which those who serve the tent have no right to eat. For the bodies of the animals whose blood is brought into the holy places by the high priest as a sacrifice for sin are burned outside the camp. Jesus also suffered outside the gate in order to sanctify the people through his own blood. Therefore, let us go to him outside the camp and bear the reproach he endured. For here we have no lasting city, but we seek the city that is to come. Again, so how are they encouraging the Christians who are getting expelled from the synagogue? Here.
They're saying you can find Jesus.
Jesus on the margins. Jesus on the outside. Jesus is an outsider. You know that things happen. You know, you were in or you were out, and you were out. They put all the unclean stuff out. Jesus dies outside the city, and yet took all the uncleanness on himself, made us clean. And so again, just as Jesus did that, so then if you get kicked out and you're on the margins, you're outside the synagogue, well, that's where Jesus is too. So, and good reminder to us to remember to look for the outsiders as well. All right, and I'm just going to keep reading so we get through here in the next few minutes. So through Jesus, then, let us continually offer up a sacrifice of praise to God, that is, the fruit of lips that acknowledge his name. Do not neglect to do good and to share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God. It's not the temple sacrifices anymore. It's the do mercy, love justice, walk humbly with your God stuff. Obey your leaders and submit to them, for they are keeping watch over your souls as those who will have to give an account. Let them do this with joy and not with groaning, for that would be of no advantage to you. Thank you for letting me serve with joy and not too much groaning. Pray for us. Pray for us, for we are sure that we have a clear conscience, desiring to act honorably in all things. I urge you the more earnestly to do this in order that I may be restored to you the sooner. All right, and then, so again, that series of exhortations is how the book of Hebrews ends, and it ends with this benediction, which was the benediction Pastor Mark used at the end of the service today. Now may the God of peace, who brought again from the dead our Lord Jesus, the great shepherd of the sheep, by the blood of the eternal covenant, equip you with everything good that you may do his will, working in us that which is pleasing in his sight, through Jesus Christ, to whom be glory forever and ever. Amen. And then final greetings. I appeal to you, brothers, bear with my word of exhortation, for I have written to you briefly. Hebrews is apparently briefly. All depends on your point of view. You should know that our brother Timothy has been released, with whom I shall see you if he comes soon. Again, that's why when we looked back when we started the study, looking at who wrote Hebrews, well, it's got to be someone connected to Timothy. Greet all your leaders and all the saints. Those who come from Italy send you greetings. Again, Rome. So there's at least potentially people writing from Rome. And then grace be with all of you. And that's the end. So, all right. Thank you very much as we've gone through this book of Hebrews. Next week, no regular Bible study, but turns out that the orphan grain train buckets are going to be assembled next week. The youth are doing it, but you're more than welcome to stay around and help out with that too, as you do that. And then we won't have a regular Bible study for a while. We might do one in December. We'll have to see, because so assemble buckets next week, November 24th. No Bible study on the 1st of December, because that's the Sunday after Thanksgiving. And then the 8th is the annual budget meeting. So we'll be doing that, and then we'll see what we do on the 15th or 22nd in between services those days. So, but thank you all for coming, and we'll see you. Yep.
Yeah.